Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to thank everyone for joining Acadia Center and our webinar today on the Community EnergyVision Action Guide. Before we dive into the presentation, I wanted to take a moment to introduce our team on today's call. First, we have Kathleen Meal, policy advocate in our main office and the lead in developing the Action Guide. And myself, Colin Howe, Senior Attorney and Director of Acadia Center's New York office. A few notes on logistics. During the presentation, you can type questions into the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. We'll answer those questions near the end of the webinar. And we can also address more targeted policy questions offline. So with that, let's move to some quick background. Acadia Center is excited to share our latest piece of work, the Community EnergyVision Action Guide. The Action Guide grew out of work that Acadia Center has been producing, which began with EnergyVision, to showcase how the Northeast can shift to a clean, consumer-friendly energy system. So we see that vision here in the second slide. Rooftop solar and wind producing renewable energy, electric vehicles charging and driving around town, energy storage located in homes and businesses, all drawing on market-ready technologies to produce deep emission reductions and to maximize the economic, environmental, and public health benefits. This slide comes from Acadia Center's Community Energy Vision Report, which focused on the changes needed to advance sustainable community energy systems. The Energy Vision series also includes Utility Vision, which provides additional details for electricity sector reforms and opportunities needed at the utility level. So altogether, the work sets out a pathway for ambitious but achievable advances in 4 key areas, which we'll go over today: energy efficiency, renewable power, electrification of buildings and transportation, and grid modernization. And these will allow communities to take control of their energy systems and to reform the way energy is planned and managed. So today we'll take about half an hour to walk through the Community Energy Vision Action Guide. And Kathleen will start out by explaining the Action Guide, including its context, components, and potential uses for state and local action. Then we'll transition to a discussion of the specific actions that communities here in New York can take to advance community energy. And we are very interested in hearing from you guys about your experiences, insights, and questions. So as I said, if you want to share any of these during the presentation, you can type them into the Q&A box, and we'll answer them and any other comments towards the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kathleen.
Great, thanks Cullen, and thanks to everybody who's on the line with us today. Cullen described Acadia Center's Energy Vision series, and it's important to know that as Acadia Center developed that work, we became increasingly aware that communities are really the place where the clean energy future happens. Communities are the places that we benefit from the new energy technologies and unprecedented access to affordable, resilient local energy. And communities really have great capacity to change behavior and to establish new norms. Unfortunately, as you well know, communities are also dependent on what state rules allow them to do. And those rules really vary widely across the 7 Northeast states. At Acadia Center, we believe that communities deserve the freedom to act. Acadia Center prepared the Community Energy Vision Action Guide to explore the changes needed to let communities fully benefit and participate in a sustainable low emissions energy system and to achieve that modernized energy vision. We know those changes will need to align community energy opportunities with state laws and rules, and they need to modernize the outdated rules that are currently blocking community action. Those changes will require community support And that is where Acadia Center's Community Energy Vision Action Guide comes in. The Action Guide is designed to meet a couple of goals. It's designed to raise awareness of existing opportunities and obstacles, to be a user-friendly resource based on extensive research of the laws and regulations governing community energy in each of the Northeast states, and by identifying barriers to community energy, to be an inspiration for advocacy for the changes needed to expand community energy options. So what kind of options and opportunities are we talking about? Acadia Center identified 4 categories of action that communities can take to shape their energy systems. And that includes how buildings use energy, how energy is generated, delivered, and purchased, how zoning and siting can shape clean energy developments, and how residents, businesses, and municipalities pay for it all. The Action Guide includes a comprehensive list of almost 40 clean energy actions across these 4 categories, where communities could theoretically have a high degree of control. It includes 3 interlinking sections. So the Action Guide starts with an overview of the 4 categories of action. It includes a comparison of the availability of those actions across the 7 Northeast states. And then the final section is specific to each state. It's a deeper dive into the specific rules and regulations that govern those actions. Together, these 3 sections will help you determine whether a given action is possible, limited, or prohibited under current state rules. And it will also provide both the regional context and the state-specific considerations for moving forward. So the way it works is you start by identifying a clean energy action. And then the guide uses simple color coding to give you a clear sense of the status of that action and the next steps. You begin with a series of questions. Is the action legal under current state regulations? Has it been done before? Is it replicable? Is there a clear precedent? And the answers help you determine where the action stands under current state rules. There's a traffic signal-like key which identifies each action as green, yellow, or red. Green indicates that there are no structural barriers to action. Acadia Center identified actions as green when there was a clear legislative authorization or a clear precedent. These are the steps that every community in a given state could take. But these actions haven't necessarily been adopted in every community or even in any community. The green actions are a sort of to-do list. Yellow indicates a lack of clarity in state rules and regulations. Acadia Center identified actions as yellow when there were limitations or considerations that could hinder community progress, or when there was just no precedent for action. These are the steps that may be possible, but communities really need to learn more, and they may need to work for changes in state rules or laws. So yellow actions can be seen as a kind of a research project. Red is a full stop. Acadia Center identified actions as red when they were clearly prohibited by state laws or rules. These are the steps that are not currently possible. But these are the areas that are ripe for reform, and a red light could inspire communities to roll up their sleeves and engage in state-level advocacy. Now, when you first look at the regional matrix, you may be keyed in initially to the status of each action here in New York. But comparing which actions are possible, limited, and prohibited across the region may give you some broader context about how states stack up and spark a few aha moments. You'll notice when you look at the columns here that no state stands out as entirely permissive or restrictive. There is no column of green or red. And the balance of green and red in each column may be surprising. States that are widely acknowledged as lagging in the uptake of clean energy actions don't necessarily lack for opportunity. They may be unaware of their options, or communities may be unsure how to take action toward their clean energy goals. If you look in the other direction on the matrix, you'll notice that fewer than a third of the actions Acadia Center researched and documented have the same status across all 7 states. And no action was prohibited across the board. There's no row of reds anywhere in this matrix. The bottom line is that communities have a variety of options under current law and plenty of opportunities to expand those options and push for reform. We're going to dig in just a moment to the actions that are permitted, limited, and prohibited here in New York. But first, Cullen, have you seen any questions pop up about the structure of the action guide? Any clarifying questions so far?
So I have no questions yet, which is fine, but I will ask a couple of my own that hopefully you can answer. So my first one is, how did Acadia Center select the actions to include in the action guide?
Yeah, that's a good question. Throughout the research effort, we worked with a variety of people, both here at Acadia Center and outside the organization. And we came up with a list of all the potential actions, or many of the potential actions, and really just dug in to see which ones were viable, which steps might lead to meaningful change, and really lead to direct emissions reductions and community energy control. So we tried to be comprehensive, but we're sure that there will be other issues and other options that emerge over time.
What surprised you the most about when you finished the action guide?
We were really surprised by just the sheer diversity in what is permitted or not across the region. There were times that it felt like there really was no rhyme or reason to which options which communities have. So that's both puzzling and exciting, because it means that even when there were roadblocks to community energy action in one state, there may be the path forward right across the state line.
Mm-hmm.
All right, shall we keep going and take a look at what's going on in New York? Or
yeah, let's keep going.
All right. So we're going to start by digging into some of the things that are permitted here in New York. If we start with the buildings category, one possible action is to require new construction to be electric vehicle ready. And this action is a good example of the diversity of availability across the region, because the region shows that while this is permitted here in New York and also in Vermont, it is limited in New Hampshire and it's prohibited everywhere else in the Northeast. So what exactly are we talking about? What does it mean to be EV ready? The action guide explains that Acadia Center asked whether state rules allow cities and towns to require building code provisions, like wiring requirements, for example, that will make it easier, more efficient, and more affordable to install EV charging infrastructure in new or renovated buildings. And for communities here in New York, the answer is yes. The action guide lets users know where that authority comes from. It links to the relevant statute, and it also links to the New York City Building Code, which requires that certain new parking facilities be EV ready. It's clear that there's a path forward for any community in New York that wants to pursue this action, and the same is true for the other green light actions. Not so for the yellow light actions. If we take a look at the clean energy generation, delivery, and purchasing category, one possible action is to establish a municipal utility. This is also called municipalization. And the regional matrix shows that there's a clear yes in Connecticut, Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, but the answer is less straightforward here in New York. To come up with that matrix line, Acadia Center asked whether municipalities could establish their own electric systems to acquire an existing utility, including infrastructure and operations. This is often done as a way to lower rates or to source more renewables and to really ensure local control. And here's the situation. Technically, this action could be green. Municipalities in New York do have the authority to establish public utility companies, and more than 40 actually own and operate their own utilities. But practically, this step is another story. Creating a new municipal utility would require legislative approval, and that's really quite a hurdle to taking this action. Some yellow light actions fall into this gray area. They're legal but difficult. Others lack any legal or regulatory framework. And so communities really need to learn more before tackling any of the yellow light actions. There are just no guarantees about how they will go. There is a guarantee when you tackle the red light actions. This is an area where communities should really expect pushback and be ready to engage in advocacy. For example, in the clean energy zoning and siting category, one possible action is to establish a clean energy district or a regional clean energy commission. You can see that the Northeast states are across the board on this action. It's permitted in New Hampshire and Vermont. It's limited in Connecticut and Maine. It's prohibited in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and here in New York. To figure that out, Acadia Center asked whether state rules allow municipalities to join or to create a clean energy district or a regional clean energy commission. These districts or commissions could help neighborhoods, municipalities, or groups of municipalities streamline energy planning and enhance the integration and administration of clean energy programs. In some ways, the goals of this action are being accomplished in New York through other means. New York municipalities are encouraged to develop comprehensive plans, and those plans could include sustainability targets and land use priorities. Broader statewide coordination is happening through REV. But the establishment of clean energy districts or commissions is not an option for New York communities as it is in some states. And that's why you see a red for this action. You may decide that you don't need this option, but this red light and all of the red light actions in the action guide do signal opportunities for state level advocacy. So that's how the document works for all 37 community energy actions outlined and detailed in the action guide. You walk through the status and the considerations for each action, and even if a particular action is prohibited in the state, you can see where and how it has been accomplished. The action guide is really a combination of accurate, actionable information and some inspiration for advocacy. And Acadia Center really looks forward to collaborating with communities in New York. I'm happy to be a resource on the action guide itself, and Cullen, as the director of Acadia Center's New York office, is a great resource for the work and the advocacy. Cullen's contact information is right here, and I'm going to hand it back to him because I think there are a couple of questions, and we will tag team to see who's the best person to answer them. But first, you want to wrap it up?
Great, yeah, so I'll go ahead and do that. And then we have a couple questions, which I'm happy to put out. So we hope that the action guide can demonstrate how crucial it is to align community action with state level reforms. We also hope that by combining the regional context for community energy actions and the state-specific information for moving forward, the guide will raise awareness of which actions can be taken now and will help build support for updating the rules and processes that govern our energy system. We also hope that the action guide sparks some friendly competition between states. As advocates, realize that their neighbors may have a different slate of available options. And we hope that certain states that haven't adopted certain things other states have, we hope the states that have can be a resource for these other states. So, so going forward, our plan for the action guide includes widespread distribution to community and state level stakeholders, webinars like this one to introduce people to this resource, and further outreach to spark coalition work on state level reforms that will benefit all communities in these states. So we have one question which I will go ahead and read. In the action guide resource, how much backup details are included? Is there more comprehensive information besides the quote, what this means, and quote, what you should know tabs being shown on the screen?
Yes. The short answer is yes. So the action guide for New York and for each of the other states as well is available as a downloadable PDF, and within that, there are links, there are endnotes that go to the relevant statute so that you can see for each of those actions where the authority comes from. If there are sort of model programs or relevant examples, precedents, et cetera, there are links to those there. I would love to say that we've been exhaustive in collecting all of that information, but I'm sure that we have missed some things. And one of the interesting parts about a project like this is that we actually hope that it needs to be updated pretty soon, right? We're hoping that the community energy options available throughout the region are constantly expanding, and that this guide becomes out of date as advocates push forward. If you have information about something that we've missed that you think we should include in one of those updates, or that we should just know about, absolutely contact us. Cullen's info is here, or you can reach, mine isn't here, but you can reach me through the website as well.
Yeah, and the only thing I would add to that is to the extent that if there's one of these items that you're interested in and you just can't find additional information about it, feel free to reach out, because we're happy to use our resources to answer those questions. And like Kathleen said, future editions of this will hopefully include that information, and also as things change to include the updated information. Let's see, so I have another question. How does New York stack up compared to the other Northeast states? Are we ahead of the curve, behind the curve?
That is one of we talked about things that were surprising in this research, and it's surprising how difficult it is to answer that question based on the lineup in the matrix. So New York, like all of the states across the region, has a bunch of opportunity and a bunch of room to move forward. So it's hard to say. There are a lot of options that are available to New York communities now. There aren't a terrific number of reds in this key, but that doesn't mean that the action is being taken or that it's proceeding well. So I'm going to hedge on that one.
Right. Just because it's allowed doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of communities are doing it.
Exactly.
Could mean that, but it doesn't have to, right?
Right.
Okay. One last question. Maybe we've answered this, but maybe you could if there's anything we left out, you could answer it. How does how do we see the action guide being used going forward by advocates and others?
Well, you know, we have a few ideas, but we want to be clear that we're not the ones necessarily driving this project from here on. We're really interested to see where communities take this research. When you notice that there are a lot of options that aren't being carried through right now, it may be that the guide is sparks folks to really take advantage of the options that are available right now. It may be that the red lights and the yellow lights resonate more with activists who say, or advocates who say, we've got to expand the options. And we're hoping that there will be individuals and groups that team up with each other, with Acadia Center, to really push for the changes in state rules that will turn this whole matrix green and back up the matrix of green with great spotlight programs that show how it's actually, the work is actually being done. So there could very well be many uses for the action guide that we haven't thought of yet. So we're open to suggestions and eager to hear from folks who are really on the ground doing this work.
Okay, well, I don't see any other questions, so I'll give people another 10 seconds if they want to type something into the Q&A bar. But otherwise, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. Please feel free to reach out, and obviously feel free to share this action guide with friends and colleagues.